Hello BookTube, and welcome to Poetry Tuesday, our ongoing feature on this channel where we will grapple with contemporary poetry together and see what we make of it. What's good, what's bad, what we like, what we don't like. I will read you a poem, or more than one poem. I will write the poems out down below, and we will discuss them. I'm learning a lot from your comments, and I'm being made to think about these things in new ways, which is just right. That's exactly what I want. I hoped when I started this that I could just take advantage of the fact that I have a large body of smart and experienced readers that can help me to learn about an entirely new genre. And we've had a rocky road in January. Some of the poems that we have encountered have not been particularly good, and some of them have been bad in rather obvious ways that are a little bit disappointing. They're a little bit disappointing. And a couple of you pointed out that maybe the reason for that is because I've been getting them from non-poetry journals. I've been getting them from the New Yorker or something like that. Places where you wouldn't expect a great deal of poetry acumen. I'm not sure that I agree with that on two levels. One, that's where people read. And therefore you would expect that the poetry that would show up in those places would be less specialized, less ingrown than the stuff that's in specialty publications that are just by and for poets. But also, too, the history, for instance, of the TLS, but I'm sure also of the New York Times Book Review or the New York Review of Books or New Yorker, is one of extremely astute editors actually changing poems while they had Philip Larkin on the phone or A.E. Housman on the phone saying, you know, I've read over your poem, I'm perfectly willing to give you, you know, 25 pounds for it. But I'm wondering if this word here in line 14 isn't quite the wrong word for what you mean. The discussion would just go on the phone, and whether or not the poem was changed was entirely up to whether or not the editor made a convincing choice. It wasn't that the poet said, well, how dare you trespass on, you know, on the high holy sanctities of my art with a capital A. You're just an ordinary person. You aren't fit to even comment on my word choice. There wasn't any thought like that, and I think that poetry thrives when you don't think that way. But one way or another, I have listened because I want this. I mean, we're still in early days. We're just in January. We're going to do this forever. So I've listened, and I thought today we would go to an actual book of poetry. It's a contemporary book of poetry. I want to read you a poem that I found there. I don't think you'll have any trouble with this one. In fact, I don't think there'll be a single one of you who will think that this is bad. This blew me away. The whole book did. This is called Dog Moon. The old dog next door won't stop barking at the moon. My neighbor is keeping a log. What time, how long, whether howling is involved. I know she's awake, as I am, robe askew, calling animal control while I drink dark tea and stare out my window at the voodoo moon, throwing beads of light into the arms of the bare-chested trees. Who can blame him when the moon is as big as a kitchen clock and ticking like a time bomb? The bright full moon with its beryl core and its striated face, its plasma umbra, pouring borrowed light into every abyss on earth, turning the rivers silver, plowing the mountains' shadows across grasslands and deserts, towns riddled with mineshafts, oil rigs and mills, yellow tractors asleep in the untilled fields. The what were they like moon, staring down on rain-pocked gravestones, worming its way into gopher holes, setting barbed wire fences ablaze. Who wouldn't love this old-tooth moon, this toilet paper moon? This feral, flea-bitten moon is that dog's moon, too. Certain of nothing moon, bone he can't wait to sink his teeth into. Radio moon, the white dial tuned to static. Panic moon, pulling clouds like babies, like blankets over its baby face. A moon portrait hung from a nail in the starred hallway of the past. Full moon that won't last. I can hear that dog clawing at the fence. Moon, a manhole cover sunk in the boulevard of night, monocle on a chain, well of light, a frozen pond lifted and thrown like a discus onto the sky. I scratch my skull, look down into my stained, empty cup. That dog has one blind eye. The other one's looking up. That is Dog Moon. And I loved it. And I think even on first hearing, you can hear But that is not just stacked up prose. That's the complaint that you have had and that I have had with a lot of what calls itself contemporary poetry, is that it looks like it's just sentences stacked on top of each other. That is very much not stacked up prose. That is a sinuous, winding thing that every word and phrase of which has been whittled and considered 1,000 times. And that's what I want from poetry. I'm not sure that I want anymore. I think I have to concede to contemporary poetry that I'm not allowed to want anymore the metric regularity of a Longfellow or a Whittier. I'm willing to concede that, provided I get what I just got, provided I get the thing that too many people forget went hand in hand with that meter in those older and now unread poets, which is the poetic insight. The two things went hand in hand. It wasn't the one. You got the one, but you didn't have the other. And if you sacrifice the rhythmic, the regular meter, then you get leaves of grass. No, the poetic insight is what gives life to a poem, regardless of whether you use stratified metric or not. I wish that I could make that point to young people who look at Whittier or Emerson or Longfellow and just dismiss them out of hand. I wish I could make that point. I wish I could say, why don't you go sniffing around for the poetic sensibility first, before you just dismiss it because the end of the lines rhyme. But if we are, not just me, but you as well, if we are willing to grant to contemporary poetry that it doesn't have to have that kind of, stopping by woods on a snowy evening, that sort of thing, if it doesn't have to have complete rhythmic regularity, it should very much still have the poetic sensibility, and that poem is suffused with it. Just suffused with it. And I want to not only give you that poem, I will write it down below. I want to recommend where I found it, too. I don't usually do this with new books because they're so hideously expensive. But you could find this one in your library, or ask your library to order it, or buy it. And it's this, Only as the Day is Long, by Dorianne Laux, or Laux. Only as the Day is Long is the name of this. It's not quite slim. And it's a collection of excerpts from some of her slim volumes of poetry. So it's new and selected poems. There's quite a bit here that's already appeared in those slim volumes that only, I think, poetry aficionados would even have seen. This is by W.W. Norton, and I think it's meant for a wider audience, but boy, oh boy, I'm here to tell you, if you liked that poem, this book is full of poems like that. Poems that have that poetic sensibility, that poetic insight, where ordinary things, it happens over and over again in this book, ordinary things are transformed, transmuted by the poet simply pondering them and then capturing them in that kind of, what I mentioned, that kind of whittled word choice. There are poems in here on very simple, ordinary things, and yet I detected barely a dud in the whole book. I thought it was just riveting. If I could be assured that poetry collections that I would encounter in the rest of the year would be as good as this, I would be all over it. I am still enthusiastic, but I think I might have hit a high water mark early in the year. We shall see. I'd be only to the good if I don't, but boy, oh boy. I highly recommend this book. even though I am still on baby feet as far as even knowing what I'm recommending when it comes to contemporary poetry, I know what I like. I know what other people would like. And this is poetry that does exactly what it's supposed to do. It remembers that it has an audience. It remembers that it's supposed to be comprehensible, because if it's not comprehensible, it can't move you. And there's a lot in here that will move you. So that's our poem for today. I will leave it down below, and as usual, I welcome your comments. What you made out of it, whether or not you liked it. So I'm going to wrap this up for now, but we'll be back. Plenty more literary stuff to talk about. Thank you, BookTube.